Boo.
Hello.
Hey.
Good evening. Oh, sorry, I forgot.
Keep it on.
Should we continue talking about MySpace, or should
Oh,
we
I have
just
to now.
Yeah, we have to, right? Okay. Let me first introduce all guests of tonight. We've got Inigo here, Inigo Kennedy. Welcome,
Right.
welcome to the show. It's been a while, man. It's been ages.
It has. Yeah,
Good to see you.
it has. And you?
Yeah, absolutely. I see people joining here now on Twitch and YouTube saying hi. So hello everybody who is watching there. We got Sam joining us from Berlin, right, Sam?
Yes, I'm in Berlin right now, yeah.
Okay. So I've always wondered. I'm slightly dyslexic, and I've always wondered. Yeah. Okay. So say it.
See if you can work it out. I mean, Setaoc mass, I call it, but I mean, it's just, it's just my name, actually.
Yeah, backwards, right? Sort of.
This would be extra to confuse people.
Well, you did a good job, confused me. So, okay, welcome to the show, man. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me. I was happy to read your email on Monday night.
Yeah, it was last minute, but it was really cool. You replied straight away, and here we are.
Well, to receive an email from Speedy J is it doesn't happen every day.
Well, awesome. Gonna chat about everything we like. So let's do it tonight. And of course, Ed is with us again.
Yo.
Good to see you again, man.
Yeah, good to see you too, right, everyone. Yeah, great to see everyone. Thanks
nice to have you back. Absolutely. So I'm not going to say hi to everybody who's popping in right now, but hello, people who are watching. I should mention, if you have any questions for any of us or any suggestion what we should talk about or whatever, just drop it, and Sander will bring it in the background if it's any relevant. So MySpace.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's start at the beginning.
That actually didn't cross my mind for ages until Inigo just mentioned it. We were just discussing internet stuff. Or should we switch to NFT, because that's more sort of current?
It's like the beginning and the end of the same story.
Yeah.
I still don't really get this NFT stuff. It's kind of a little bit confusing, isn't it?
Well, maybe Ed can explain, because he kind of dabbles in it right now, right?
Okay, well, yeah, I mean, I'll attempt to explain. I have dabbled, and I have currently ceased dabbling, but may continue. I don't know. It's really interesting, but a lot of people are, bringing to light that there are quite serious or potential environmental issues with the amount of energy that's used in the whole process, because it requires a shit ton of computers all linked together.
Yeah.
As far as I understand, it's a kind of decentralized network, and it's not owned by any of the major giants like Google or anyone else, which is a good thing, one would assume. But it's it requires a lot of computers all linked together. So they estimate that if you sell a piece of work for $300, it actually costs you about 1 year's worth of energy for one laptop computer. So it's like a crazy amount of energy. But I'm just reading into all these things now. It's very, very new. Everyone's jumping on it. I mean, there's already this kind of scene of like digital artists and 3D artists who have been into it for a long time, I think. And now some musicians also jumped on and started selling their work, like famously Grimes and
Speedy I saw as well.
Yeah, a lot of people have been into it, more in the mainstream pop world, but it is quite an experimental way of selling something, let's say. And I also spoke to some kind of art curators who deal in paintings and sculptures and physical art, and they were like, I don't really get this kind of digital art principle. But the main thing is with an NFT, it's one original file which is traceable and fully open source, so everyone can see what what happens to it as it gets sold and resold, and whoever buys it owns the master, let's say.
Yeah.
So
It's kind
as
of
far as I
interesting,
understand, yeah, it's kind of cool. So if you think about selling a piece of music, if you sell one track to one person and they're the only one that owns it, maybe that's an interesting thing to explore. I don't know.
But it's not actually the same as sorry, Inigo. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, wasn't there famously a Wu-Tang record? There was only one copy of it. But at least you have a physical record then.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's quite a philosophical discussion about what you're owning. You are just owning the right to say you own something.
Yeah, because I mean, traditionally, owning a master of a piece of music means that you also are the person to contact if somebody wants to use it. You know, so if you're the owner of a master of a recording and somebody wants to sample it or something, then in theory, then they should contact the owner of the master, and then they can make a deal about it. But in this case, that's not even happening. It's just the ownership doesn't really mean that it is just the ownership of of that single copy. But even if you the original artist that sold this master will still be the master of the recording or the owner of the recording.
Yeah, I think the cool thing is you can set your terms. So you could, in fact, say, "I give you the rights if you want." I think you have to make it very clear. But it's pretty, it's early days, and we'll see what happens. If they introduce a cleaner way of powering the whole system, then I think it could be amazing for musicians. Like, imagine if you have some super cool artwork and a little video clip and your album and some vinyl, and then if you sell an NFT, that means someone gets a record in the post, and then there's only 20 copies or something like that. I mean, I can see it. Yeah, I can see it working with what you're doing, Joachim. If it sort of environmentally, if it's clean, then it makes a lot of sense, I think.
The wheels are turning.
Yeah. I mean, it's
limited editions, like another way to sell things or to get. I mean, fans. It's a fan-based thing, I think, as well.
Yeah.
Well, I'd be interested if the NFT could actually be a part of the art. If we're talking about art, could it create something unique? You might have 50 pieces of music or 50 pieces of art. Maybe somehow that the NFT could actually make that art different.
Yeah, totally.
At least it does something.
Yeah, there's a lot of generative stuff going on, and people doing collaborations and like with hundreds of artists sometimes, where they each like submit some code or some raw file, and then NFTs are generated, and each one is individual. And I can see some kind of nice correlation with techno for sure. It's pretty futuristic. It's like when you upload something to the server, it says uploading your file to the International Space Network or whatever. It's like, I don't know. It's like William Gibson novels in real life.
Did you already get as far as like looking to upload something then, Ed?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, you have to invest in it to be able to upload something. It costs a little bit of money in
so
Bitcoin.
you're buying it with crypto though, right? With, like,
it's mainly Ethereum.
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, some of my friends have been into cryptocurrencies for years already, and
I bet they're doing all right now.
I think it's fair to say it's booming, but it's not really my world. But yeah,
I've been dabbling in a bit of crypto lately. I think my the only reason why I managed to survive is through this crypto stuff.
Really?
Stock markets. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
it became quite easy. It wasn't the Wall Street traders anymore that really took over the markets in the past year. It was like the amount of people signing up to start trading has just gone through the roof. Like, I mean, with all these Robinhood traders and stuff in America, and I think everybody kind of succeeded with trading a little bit in 2020 because of like the huge financial crash and the markets going down so much. So it's kind of easy and back in 2020, but now it's become a little bit more stabled out a little bit. But yeah.
Seems to me naively that something at some point has to go wrong with it all.
Exactly. Let's get in and get out. Really.
But as long as you're there on the way up, then I guess that's a good thing.
So far, you know, even though the internet is seems to be something that is like a fixed thing in all of our lives, you know, it's a really young thing, and since the beginning, it's been fluid. You know, things have been changing all the time. Nothing seems to last forever. So we'll see. Anyway, but yeah, this has got a good chance to be around for a while, I guess.
But that's the internet in connection with the way I've traveled through the music world is brilliant, because my first release came out in '96, and you know we were using command line computers at university to send emails, and you know the internet was really is like nascent idea really, and to see how everything's changed in that time, it's incredible.
Yeah, it's just a short time. Yeah.
I was sending emails to Carl Regis, trying to send some demo tapes, and I'm sitting in a computer room at university with this kind of blue screen and typing emails there, and it seemed to work. It's when you think how I studied electronic engineering in Manchester, at UMIST in Manchester. So we, but yeah, the time is so short. How quickly things have changed, and so it's getting quicker and quicker and quicker, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
These ideas. You know, MySpace maybe is only 15 years ago or something. And disappeared, and the next thing come and go, and the next thing comes and goes. So
yeah, I mean, I would credit MySpace as kickstarting. I mean, it was the way I got into making a little network and eventually releasing music and stuff like that, and like getting my first gigs and all that kind of thing. Like in London around that time, there was a little minimal techno scene buzz going on and a little community, and it was on MySpace, and that's how I hooked up with other producers and friends, and yeah, it was quite an important step, I think. Can we talk about more nerds? Okay. But that sparked something, Inigo, because if you studied electrical engineering, and I guess that has a basic understanding of computing, right, or requires a basic understanding of computing, then it's super aligned with techno and with this kind of, at that time, that whole exploding scene of futuristic sounding music must have been really perfect for you.
Yeah, I mean, although I got into computers a long time before that. So I was actually, I mean, I started coding when I was probably around 8 or 9 years old. So that's the early 80s. Probably thanks to my dad. He was an electrical engineer. He worked on things like fire alarm systems and so on. And he brought a like industrial computer home when I was around 8 years old. It didn't even have a case. It was just like a circuit board, and you plugged a keyboard into it with this ribbon cable, and it had a one line display. Cool. But he showed me how to program it, and I had a robot that I built out of Lego. Lego Technics, and put some motors on it, and actually my dad made a circuit board. We had it connected up, and you could program it to do stuff. Wow. And that for me, I mean, that sticks in my mind as like a gateway to technology and computing, and then from then I could never be filled up. I was just constantly coding and learning stuff. So it was way before university that I had started making music with computers, with a BBC B computer. Wow. This strange thing called the Music 500, which was a beige box that you had to program to make music. At the time, it was quite advanced, and it had its own language called Ample. But it wasn't like sitting at a keyboard and playing. You had to code in the music. So I was going to the library and getting scores for Howard Jones and Jean-Michel Jarre albums, wow. and then coding them in, like reading the scores, and then you'd have to type in like 24, C3, and that would be a middle C for 25. A length of 24 wow. or whatever it was, and it would take hours to type these things in.
So how did you get from there? Because this sounds like a really sort of like a theoretical way of dealing with music, right? I mean, how did you go there? Yeah. When did you find out that you could actually use music as a tool of expression? Because listening to your music, you never would guess there is like this systematic stuff behind it, or your brain is capable of doing that, because it sounds so human, so fluid, and so imaginative, So where did you make the discovery?
Well, I guess at the same time, we had a small upright piano at home, and I would kind of just go and play it. I didn't have formal music lessons. I think I learned saxophone for about a year when I was 13-ish. That was horrendous. But in a way,
Spandau Ballet.
Yeah, well, no, it's never that good or bad, whichever way you take it. But so that was a much more pure form of making music. It was like an emotional level, and just exploring without any rules, because I didn't have lessons, just exploring melody and the way music worked. So it's probably that those two things came together.
Yeah.
And I discovered that I could make emotive music with a computer and not just programming in like someone else's music like it's a formula.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's amazing, really.
And like, what? So then what? Can you remember what was the first system that you were working on when your first records came out, or like, were you recording into a computer or using a computer as the main brain?
Yeah, so after the BBC B, then I ended up. I had a summer job working for a PC company, like putting together PCs, and I ended up spending all the money that I earned to get like a pretty nice PC for the time, which was like probably 1989-ish, around then, and started to and had a sequencer. It was running on DOS. This is before Windows. It was a thing.
Yeah.
I think it was called. It was Voyetra Sequencer Plus Gold. And you had to know enough about computers to like get MIDI interfaces to work, and everything was so arcane.
Wow.
And I had a D50 keyboard, a Roland D50, which I still have in the storage unit, and an Evolution EVS1 module. There's like one new synth module, and an ART. It was like a guitar multi-effects unit, really. It was a rack thing.
Yeah.
And that's it. And I had a couple of things that I built myself. So I had a mixer that I made that had 5 or 6 channels, and it was just rotary level controls and like one auxiliary level, and
Cool.
That was it. And it was like I could call it a summing mixer these days.
Right.
It'd be like 5,000 quid. But it was just a small circuit board in a box, and I had a distortion unit and a filter unit that I made as well. They were just in these like anonymous black boxes.
Nice.
And that was the setup, really. But I still have that stuff that was recorded onto cassette, just like mixed down straight onto cassette. And I still have that stuff. And I started archiving it in the last couple of years to get it digitized, and listening to the arrangements. It's really fascinating that the arrangements were very different to how it worked now, but they were also quite complex. And I really had, there was not much equipment, and the sequencer was probably quite basic, but you really like used everything 120%, like learned how to use and abuse things. Whereas, eventually the gear lust arrives, and you start to get a bit of money as you get a bit older and become an adult and start working and spending it on equipment, and you end up with a bit too much, maybe, and you don't learn everything quite as as much depth. So that was like a golden time of discovering how I could make music.
I guess it's also the thing that if you build your own stuff, or you use very simple equipment, which you really have to stretch to get something out of, you're basically still working according to your own way of thinking about things, or how systems should work. And once you get into more complex operating systems designed by other people, you have to always make this switch between your own way of thinking and the way things are implemented, which is designed by somebody else. So you have to kind of adapt your way of thinking if you buy really complex sort of new gear.
And that's very hard to judge before you actually get hold of something.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a very good point, because you can, you can look at equipment now or software now, and it looks incredible. You look at a YouTube video and you're like, wow, but when you actually maybe get it in front of you, and you're like, it just doesn't work. It's like a completely different paradigm to your flow.
It's actually quite true. You can be obsessed by how something sounds, but if it really just doesn't gel, between yourself and the instrument, if there's just no logical way you could connect to it, with your brain, then it doesn't really make sense to try, even to develop a relationship with it, because it you were not made for each other, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. But it's like during the last year, I discovered you could get an emulator of the old BBC computer that I had, and you could, with an emulator of this Music 500 thing, and it still appealed to me on some level. They're like, I have to figure out how to get this thing to make some sounds again, even though it's like completely like dumbfounding the syntax you have to use. And
so you said the arrangements sound is almost experimental and different than how things are arranged these days. So what was different? How was it? How was it different, and what caused the way the arrangements happened then?
Well, I think for me, certainly now it's, or not now, but in the last 10, 15, 20 years, it's been much more like performing when I make music, and not designing it. I hate the idea of like designing music. It has to flow and be something I'm performing in that moment, and usually I'm just capturing the stereo master. That's it. But then that wasn't really an option. I didn't have the equipment to do it, and the equipment couldn't do it, and so it wasn't more of a case of quite like in a lot of detail designing what's going to happen in this track and having the equipment set up to do something specific. So that's probably why it was different. You're challenging your mind in a different way. I'm thinking of a way to do this or to get from here to there when it's not in the moment. But now it's maybe it's also a bit more of a the DJ's headset and mindset to think of getting from one place to another. So that's something that's evolved for me as well, independently of the equipment I've used.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I mean, I've worked with stuff that wasn't based on a timeline for years before I was able to do that. Like sequencers, which just allowed you to more like you could compare it to the way MPCs work, or like any old school drum machine. You have one pattern, and you have to copy it to the next, and then make a variation, and copy it into the next one. Just make like a whole bunch of variations, and then find out the way in what order you want them in a song. And then you have to go back to the patterns to maybe remove one snare because that's that doesn't go well in whatever part so you're kind of legoing your stuff together rather than flowing with it. So but it's possible, and it makes you think about how to structure things in a different way, I guess. It's more tedious, but it's also I would say there is something to say for it, to be honest, just constructing your stuff that way. Although I haven't done it for years. I do still do it with drum machines, but not with all parts,
But I think there's the benefit of youth as well. I mean, being a lot younger, your muscle memory and your thinking, the keyboard shortcuts, for example, is just flowing out of you.
Yeah, true.
Especially if you're only dealing with one or two pieces of equipment.
Right.
Which that's so different now. Trying to get muscle memory to flow when you're using hardware or software, but at the time, your brain is like on fire because you know exactly how to get from A to B in this tiny sequencer application. That's all you have, and every single keyboard shortcut. And the software is fast as well. It would respond. You could press 5 keys in half a second, and it would do what you wanted. So there were benefits as well.
Yeah.
But I could never get my head around trackers, for example. There was just a completely different way of working which I mean is still popular. There's still a lot of trackers around. And
They're coming back.
The hardware ones, yeah. This polyend one.
Yeah,
I've
It's
seen the
interesting.
polygon one. That looks cool.
That's an example of watching a YouTube video and thinking, wow, that's really cool. But and then getting it in front of you and thinking, now what?
Yeah, Patrick, who I share the studio with, has got one of these polyend trackers, and he showed it to me a little bit. It's definitely, it looks great. It's kind of addictive once you get into it, and it's very simple to use. But I've never used those kind of hardware sequencers ever, really. I've always used a computer to sequence stuff, so I don't really know what I'm doing. I mean, now I started to get into it with Electron stuff a bit, with sequencing stuff externally. But yeah, it's it does remind me though of like you said, Inigo, when you first start out, there's this sort of naive energy, and you just go for stuff, and you want to try something out, or you have an idea and you just find any way possible to make it happen. And I think now I'm probably a bit too lazy to spend that much time or energy like learning something so thoroughly. I don't know.
It's also the limitation, I mean, working with a computer, if that's your first instrument or the thing, the platform you're learning to make music on, you basically have every possible single option in the universe available to you at once, instantly.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you are talking about the way what Inigo was telling, with a very limited, almost crippled setup, you have like that, just that way of getting things out of it. So you kind of have to become more creative, even, to get what you want.
Yeah. Totally.
I remember, it was mid early 90s. I had a Casio FZ1 sampler. It was a keyboard. It was like 25 kilos. I mean, inside was an insane amount of electronics. I mean, I know because I had a look. And
of course,
I learned how to use that thing like nothing else probably, and that was responsible for most of the music I made in the early to mid 90s. And I would, if I would listen to that stuff back now, like I don't have any idea how one machine did that stuff.
Wow, so cool.
It's like abusing samples, and I mean, in a way, it's there were people using the Akai samplers and things like the drum and bass scene exploding out of that because people were learning to use and abuse samplers in amazing ways. It's very similar. It's having that time to. It's a lot of it is to do with time. Is to just focus on a particular thing, and really it becomes an extension of you. So it's not getting in the way. It's the opposite.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's definitely not to say it's not as good as the old days. I mean, the stuff now is incredible too. But you have to. It's in a way it's harder to find the thing that works for you, I think.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Too much to choose from.
Yeah.
Question from Voyage Tech 990. When did you realize that you want to release your own records? Is that for who is this? Set? I think Sam, right?
Yeah.
Maybe. Go for it, Sam.
I don't really know. I just wanted to put my own music out there. That's why I started my label SK11, just because I was like, I feel like I like it personally, and it was always an extension of like myself. So yeah, I mean, SK11 is like the postcode from my hometown. I just felt like it was ready and that I wanted to do it personally. Maybe the music was like, I listened back to the first releases and they were not like as fully established as now, but I enjoyed them. And yeah, I think that I wanted my music to be heard by people. Some people are a little bit more shy about their music and stuff, but actually I'm kind of the opposite. Like I like to just put stuff out there, which I enjoy. That's why I also enjoy making a lot of experimental music, because it's kind of just for myself. And if people like it, then they like it. And if people don't like it, I'm not going to get too like disheartened by it, because it's also like, it should just be for yourself. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's good therapy, isn't it?
It's definitely,
make music.
I don't know how other people feel about their music personally, but I guess you've all been releasing music for a long time. And I guess, yeah, some people are really scared of like releasing music, and like there's a lot of good producers out there which kind of sit on like amazing music because they're always so scared to put it out there. And I'm like,
Right.
you're so talented, just go and do it.
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it?
I don't know. I mean, I'm always just drawing the line because I don't no longer feel the need or energy to keep working on it. You know, I get it in some state where I think it's cool. You know, in a state where I think it's acceptable or even the best version it can be. You know, like I'm not putting out anything that I don't like or I think could be improved, but there is a limit to it, you know. I'm not going to spend 6 months on something just to get like the tiniest detail that nobody will ever hear, just perfect, you know.
I used to work with a guy when I was like 18, and he was like making progressive house, and he was spending like 3 or 4 months on one track, and I was like, how's that track go? Like every week, and it's like, oh, getting there. And I was like, yeah, with progressive house, I guess you need to like fine tune all the melodies and the progressions and stuff. But I was like, that's a little bit intense.
Yeah, but pretty much when by the time it's recorded or committed to disc or to, you know, tape virtually, you know, that's pretty much it. I wouldn't, you know, I kind of clean things up after that and make it's the best version of it, and then I move on to the next one, because I think starting something is way easier than trying to recover something or to change something into what it isn't, you know.
Yeah.
If you have something going and you're not happy with it, you know, my thing would then be start working on a new idea rather than trying to, you know, sort of squeeze into a direction because you're not happy, because it just takes forever and you end up with a. I mean, I've made the mistake before, you know. I mean, but you end up with an idea, and then slowly it morphs into something else, and then you've spent all that time and, you know, millions of clicks around and stuff like that, you know, just to end up with another weak thing, you know. I'd rather have like just capture a strong idea or a really beautiful moment, and then use that as the basis to work from, or even just leave it like that, you know. If it's nice, it's nice, you know.
Yeah.
I never sit on it too much.
There's no rule really. It's like trying to compare opera and punk music. You know, they have very different reasons and very different end games as well. And if, you know, Joachim, certainly you probably started making music in a similar way to me, and it was quite organic and hardware based, and you didn't really have a lot of chance to go back and work on something again and again. So in a way, well, for me anyway, you learned to do it in the moment and capture what happened and move on.
Yeah, I mean, only when computers came along and were actually capable of also capturing the audio of what you were doing, that hasn't been around for such a long time. I think that was like 10 years into when I started making music. You know, all that time before, it was, okay, you got your mix down on the board, and at some point you hit your record button on the DAT machine or whatever, and that's your version. And then, you know, then you have to kind of zero everything out and start something new. But there's no way to get anything back. I mean, you can, you know, make Polaroids of your desk and shit like that, and, you know, keep your settings, but it never comes back the same, you know. So it's it's just make the best of the situation, record it, and, you know, start a new thing. That is,
well, I would have loved to have been in the room when you made the fun equations. That's one of the greatest, great track.
Thanks. Yeah, it was. It's fairly simple, I think. So
often the best way. Eh?
Yeah, but I mean, that was on an Atari and a 16-channel desk and some synths and modules. You know, it's nothing fancy, but that's how all of the music that back then kind of was recorded. So actually, I should talk about a track of yours, Inigo, because the first time I actually learned from your music was this preliminary statement track on Asymmetric.
Yeah, right.
Fuck, man, that blew my mind. I heard it in somebody's DJ set, and then I was like, what the hell is this? Because isn't there some DSP kind of stuff going on in there, or is it like extreme filtering? But I always thought, I was always into this combination of like chunky hardware type vibe loop stuff, you know, and then use all these micro editing on DSP 2-track editors or whatever to sort of dress it up. You know what I mean? I've done that a lot in my music as well, and that was one of the first techno tracks that implemented both. Or in my mind anyway, I don't know. I want to hear the story about it, but it sort of implemented that sort of micro tuning, micro filtering techniques. I mean, it seems like there's a lot of editing, like 2-track editing going on in that one.
Yeah,
and it combined it in a way that I thought, shit, this can also be, you know, I mean, it's always hard to. I was after that kind of sound myself always, and then. You came along and did the record that I wanted to make. You know, you know what I mean?
Wow, that's nice to hear.
No, I'd been trying to, but it always became more industrial and sort of more sort of sound designy and weird, you know, but never in a really sort of relentless.
I mean, that to me was, you know, truly the definition of minimal. The way I went about that, and it's actually, I mean, the story is I was working on a remix for the Space DJs.
Okay.
Of the AK-47 track, and I had this idea, and I was, you know, quite heavily influenced by Aphex Twin, as anyone could easily tell by listening to my music, and I was, like you were saying, getting interested in this idea of micro editing or just working with a loop and seeing what I could do with it, and that's how I started to work in doing the remix for the Space DJs. But then I kind of developed the idea and thought, what can I do with a single 1-beat loop? And that's basically what that track was.
Yeah.
Preliminary Station. And it was entirely done in SoundForge on my PC.
Yeah.
So just editing and filtering and not really paying attention to this has to be, you know, 4 beats or 8 beats or 16. So, you know, the timing in that track is pretty crazy.
Yeah, but it's got. That's why it's so energetic, you know, because all these things. It's very driving. It's just sort of 1-bar loop, and then it stops and it goes again, and then you got like it's like some wizard DJ is fucking around with a loop. You know what I mean? It still has a flow and an urgency to it, even though it's kind of not structured as a classic loopy techno track anyway, but
yeah, I mean, it was a classic comment I got for most of my tracks in the asymmetric vinyl years. It's a nightmare to mix. I mean, my reply was, my response would be, you have to mix better, but know how to mix it. But that one, and there was no mastering involved on that track, and it was some pretty harsh filtering, and it still hits today. I mean,
absolutely.
I play it from time to time, and it still gets a great reaction. But
yeah,
it was just a lot of lucky accidents in a way as well.
Yeah, for me it was the combination, because I was really heavy into 2-track editing. I used I think it was I don't know. There was one editor I forgot the name of, and then I moved to Peak at some point, and you know that I had also like a lot of plugins you could use. They were non-real time, but you could sort of preview the edits or the plugin work in real time, and then you had to save it and to make it to solidify it or to make it real, basically.
Yeah.
And I had. At some point, I was basically constructing everything in there, you know, just even making beats, just zooming in on tiny details, you know, and then treating them, and you know, doing tiny reverses and you know, different EQs on like micro bits and stuff like that. You know, it's just so much fun to work. Very tedious, but nothing else can get that effect. Basically, you really have to zoom in and go there and do the work, basically, to get that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure you had the experience that you spent a long time focused so narrowly on a one bar, and then you zoom out to the whole track again. You're like, I just wasted like 3 hours of my life.
exactly. Yeah. You can go too far and just zoom into things that, you know, in the grand scheme of things end up being completely irrelevant. But you know, it's just a thought. You know, I can do this little tweak, and it's going to be sort of like a hidden thing. Yeah,
it's satisfying on an intellectual level.
Absolutely, so I loved it.
May not have the good result.
Yeah. I mean, there's I know there's track editors around these days, but I'd never found one that I was so fluid in because, like you said, you know, in the beginning, being very fluid with a piece of gear, I had that on peak. You know, I was just key commands and just you know just very quick. Anyway.
Yeah. So I mean, I was forced to switch away from SoundForge some years ago, just the way it turned out in the software world, and I switched to Reaper.
Oh.
And it took a while, but I really got to use it a lot recently, and use some of the scripting and so on to do that kind of thing, to be able to like divide up areas and move them around and so on. But it's you know, it takes time to learn how to do it, to get and to relearn all of those shortcuts as well.
Yeah.
So Reaper is, you know, that's my go-to editor now, and where I kind of pre-master everything as well. So I still record to stereo and then do a few standard tricks.
Nice. You can get the best results with techno. I think I'm always surprised to be like spending ages on something with tons of different channels in Ableton, and then just to free my mind or just record like a jam with two machines through the mixer, and then you get this 2-track jam, and the energy is often way better or much more fluid, and like, because it's like a performance then, isn't it?
Yeah. Again, like I said before, that maybe goes back to the kind of the DJing side of things, where you learn to like sculpt the sounds, but in a stereo way, in like there's no messing around with stems. And well, I mean, Native Instruments tried to get us to DJ with stems once, but didn't really catch on. Yeah, you're just learning. You're learning how to make a single thing sound like you want it to.
Totally, and also the gestures you make with the mixing desk or with the instruments. If you're used to DJing a lot, then you know you can kind of do it in the moment, and it really captures like a vibe. Whereas if you try and program that or do it with a mouse, it's hard to recreate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's just no way to recreate it.
Right.
Nice fellow Wrong Planet on Twitch is asking Inigo about your arcing. Is that what is?
Yeah, with a hard C, but a lot of people say arsing. And,
okay, right.
I didn't consider that when I titled it.
Okay. Do you want to talk about that?
I think, I mean, that track is a perfect example of something that, you know, it happened in an hour, and it was just maybe 4 or 5 elements, and it worked.
Right.
And there's no way really to explain how to do that, but it's, you know, you get in the zone, and there it was. I mean, I didn't realize at the time that was going to be a pretty big one. It turned out that way, so I'm quite happy with that.
That's what we really all are not waiting for, but you know, we all know the feeling, you know, of slaving away for months and, you know, doing all kinds of things, and then all of a sudden, without you even realizing, this little unassuming thing that you did is eventually becoming the one that translates to, you know, and catches on or whatever.
Well, it's, you know, the thing that appeals to people, maybe not most, but, you know, with Musically, people need a hook.
Yeah,
we all know that, but to come up with a hook is not an easy thing. But overthinking it is what can ruin it in a way. Absolutely. It's just you can't be in the right mood all the time. But if it happens, then, you know, 3 notes suddenly become stuck in people's heads.
I can hear that track now in my head.
Yeah, you're like, what is that? Surely those 3 notes have been put in that order before somewhere.
Yeah.
But
I guess it's also to do with the tonality of the sound as well. I mean, that's like from the arcing track, the tonality of the main synth sound is like really unique. I think the way that it's a great track actually.
So how does it?
It's the same with the bells, for example. It's like
exactly.
Like, those few notes they stay in your head forever.
Yeah,
and the way the melody and the kind of there's two
Thank-
layers of
Thanks for
melody
saying the bells. Now it's stuck in my head.
Yeah.
there.
I actually love the bells without the bell part. Just this like first stabby
Oh,
riff,
yeah,
drum
yeah.
killer. I could just listen to that for an hour. There is a version, right? That's like I don't know how long it is, but it's 10 or 15 minutes long, and it's just that loop and doesn't
Well,
really ever
you
break
can
into
hear
the-
quite a lot of Mills tracks from that era have the same very similar
Yeah.
that core part, and you
Mhm.
can almost imagine like he had the same thing. Probably one day he's in the studios and suddenly the bells happened. And
Yeah.
with and that was that.
Exactly.
Where that melody just came together probably.
So Sam, are you a person that hunts for these things, or are you a person who will just go in the studio and let things happen, and whatever you like is the thing you go along with?
I normally let things happen, but at the moment I've been trying to study a lot more, especially in this time right now, like studying music theory, like a piano class tomorrow, and I do really want to use this time kind of wisely, because hopefully it's not always going to be like this. Maybe we'll be back on the road and I'd be a little bit more busier. So yeah, I really want to try and study like a little bit more about music theory and about how things are working like this, because it's really vital. I think also to have like a long career in music, then it can't always just be experimenting, I don't think. Although I do love to experiment, definitely. Yeah.
How long have you been learning piano?
Not long, to be honest. I just started with YouTube classes, and then I've had I dip in and out of like one-to-one classes, and then I'm gonna meet a new guy tomorrow for another set of classes, and hopefully like we have a nice connection and I can like continue on with him, because I'm really ready to do like twice a week classes, because yeah, I really want to get into it a lot more and understand like the way that it's all working, and then put that into my own music in my own certain way. Like I don't really like to stick to like proper scales and keys and stuff like this, because I feel like sometimes it like loses the feeling a little bit. And I feel like in all my years of producing, I made music that I like without being like classically trained or something like this. And I still liked it, even though it might not be, it might not be absolutely correct to like the properly trained ear, but I really like that, and I don't want to lose that part of me. But I do want to like, come up with like a little bit of more understanding, definitely, especially if you want to take out of techno, you want to move away from techno a little bit and maybe move on to like more like music for adverts and all these different sorts of things like this. And just generally have a long career in music, because
now's the time to do it, man.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right? I mean, I think we've all been learning and trying out new things, experimenting. I mean, experimenting and learning go together, but then, learning something like that where there's like a foundation and a theory to it.
Yeah, exactly. It just takes a lot of studying, and then you can kind of get to grips with it. I mean, that's all what it is. You just have to be disciplined on yourself to do it.
If you don't learn the rules, you can't break them.
Exactly.
Well, that's
my
motto.
You can break rules without you realizing you're breaking the rules. I'm not sure I agree.
What about everybody else? How do you feel on music theory and like this side of the world? Were you playing instruments as a kid, or?
Right, I mean, Ed, you've got a piano there, right?
See that?
Yeah, but it's pretty broken. I never really got it fixed because it's quite out of tune, but I quite like that it's out of tune, so I just left it. But it's fun you can play it, but it's like a honky-tonk, like pub piano vibe, which is quite fitting for tonight's chat. But I play guitar, and I used to play kind of seriously guitar when I was young, when I was a teenager, and I had guitar lessons for a couple of years with a really cool guy at my school who was like the rebellious kind of long-haired guitar teacher character who we all thought was really cool, and he taught me how to play a blues scale, so I just tried to play blues and rock and roll stuff from then on until I was about 16 and fell in love with, even 15 probably, and then fell in love with electronic stuff, and then just kind of ditched my guitar. But I still play it and use it, and it's good to know how to kind of come back to a root key or chord, I guess. But I don't really use that so much, to be honest, in electronic music. It's much more sort of intuitive, right? I think that's what you saying, Sam, as well. It's like you don't want to restrain yourself or restrict yourself to
not too much, you know. Definitely not.
Yeah,
it does tend to lose a feeling. I think somehow it just, you know, I think that's why we enjoy electronic music, because it's not always so like clean and clinical and things like this. That's maybe why we gravitated towards it rather than, you know, just listening to classical pianists all day.
Yeah, but I think that this like explosion of the analog modular side has really kind of, it's broken that kind of traditional melodic rule set anyway. You know, there's no, you're not sitting in front of a keyboard with fixed keys and fixed pitches, and it's a lot freer in terms of timing and pitches and all the different attributes. So that's kind of blown the doors off in a way.
Yeah, and just using or working with synthesizers in general, especially if you have more than one voice, you have the opportunity to detune it. And as soon as you get into that, then there's no coming back, I think. Like if you have a guitar, this is like my guitar teacher was always telling me my guitar was slightly out of tune, and we'd spend half the lesson trying to get the G string in tune, and it just used to frustrate me. Like I thought it sounded okay, and he was like, it's a little bit out of tune. Like, I don't care.
You know, pitch perfect.
Yeah, exactly. And with synths, it's amazing if you detune them, and if things are completely off, it can do exactly what you need.
Exactly. But I find the whole subject of like micro tuning I find it really fascinating, because you know your let's say our Western minds are used to a traditional certain scales of music, and then you discover that you've been listening to some like Aphex Twin stuff that's micro tonal, you know, but it's still completely made sense, and your brain is still like, it recognizes a melody and which notes are going to come in which sequence. It's really interesting that, you know, we kind of culturally get programmed with the black and white keys of the keyboard.
Yeah, the 12 notes. Exactly.
One way of explaining it, but your mind is completely working in a completely different way.
Who's your new piano teacher? Is it Hussein, Sam?
No, I had a couple of lessons with Hussein.
Yeah,
but no, it's the guy called Doran.
Because I was just going to say, because you should get him on, Joachim, Magna Pia, Hussein from Casagrowing, because he's basically an expert on this topic, and it's super interesting, because it's like just the historical aspect of you know, the Western 12 tone scale, which took over the world in music. There's so many other scales out there, or like tunings out there, and what they mean in terms of like cultural and social history is it's mental. He always blows my mind with that stuff.
Yeah, he's an interesting character. The thing that he did with the Thomann, the music shop, the thing that he did there was really interesting. That was
yeah, exactly. Just within an hour, kind of giving you like a basic foundation on all that stuff. It's everyone should take the time to watch that. Or
definitely.
Okay, well, maybe Sander can find it and then drop in the link somewhere.
Yeah,
cool. Yeah, cool. Yeah, I actually reached out to him, but I'm not sure if I had the right contact details, but we'll see.
Yeah, I'll hook you up.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is with I tend to do most of the things that I do intuitively. So I know when something is not in the Western scale, or you know, like properly tuned or whatever. But I just use whatever I feel like fits the circumstances. You know, like whatever works in the track or in the piece of music, whatever. I also like atonal things a lot, to be honest. Like completely clashing things, you know. I mean, it's a common thing in a lot of techno or abstract music, you know, to just do things that are not even in a sort of unusual scale, but even completely just atonal, you know.
Yeah,
it's fine.
Ring modulator.
Yeah.
What would we do without that? Like frequency shifting and ring mod. It's basically techno, isn't it?
There was a question about film music. Yeah, I actually did some work for that. And there's another one. Kulundi Scales from Samuli. Samuli, what's up, dude?
That must be
sure.
some crazy Finnish music.
Yeah. Maybe Samuli can explain. It doesn't ring a bell. I mean,
It's
me.
This is what the Alexei Perel is doing, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I don't really know how to explain it as such. I guess it's all very much like frequency based. Probably tiny little notches. I'm not too sure, to be honest.
Go on, Inigo.
Well, I have no idea. I've heard of it, and I think you're right about Alexei. I read about it. I don't know what it is.
I think
one more thing on the to-do list.
Right?
Yeah, it's a very long list.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's 432 hertz. I know that it's something to do with that.
Yeah.
It's like the life frequency. Yeah, but it's very appealing. The music he makes is super melodic and super harmonic and like pleasurable to listen to. It makes a lot of sense. I think it's about tunings which are supposed to sync with our natural frequencies or resonances.
Yeah, pleasing and
Wow, I'll put some of that on later.
He's crazy. He releases so much music. It's like every week there's a new album or something. It's amazing.
Tracks.
Yeah.
So have you guys been more productive, do you think, in the last year or struggling creatively?
I think it goes through waves, to be honest. I think after the first lockdown, when this all happened in March, and it was super productive, then summer came a little bit less, and the winter starts to come, then you peak again. And then now I'm like, got huge writer's block, actually. It's kind of frustrating.
Oh.
Got huge writer's block. I mean, trying to experiment with different ideas, but it just, I don't know, sometimes things just aren't quite right in life, and it just kind of disrupts the flow. So, and also now I feel like the lockdown in Berlin and like the grey weather has gone on for quite some time now, and it's time for a little bit of sunshine and like get back in the flow.
It's always good to distribute some energy into some other things when you're feeling like that, though, and then you kind of recharge a bit, and then maybe do like label work or just take a break.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Another question from the nice fella. To all of us, which artist would you most like to work with? I've answered that question before, so I'll go first. For me, it would be Jimi Hendrix.
That would be awesome.
That's a good.
I mean, there's no nothing in the question about whether he should be dead or alive. So I'm just I'm just going with it. Inigo.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
No, it's difficult, eh? That's why I say Jimi Hendrix.
It's a good get out. Although it would be amazing, probably.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah.
But it's difficult. I mean, I've very, very rarely done collaborations, full stop, and it's something I don't know. I never feel like the result is as good as working solo in a way. It's really hard to bring two people together and make the sum of the parts better.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Maybe something
I've got
for
good
me.
experience.
I mean,
yeah. Okay.
It's maybe that's not one of my strengths. But I'm sure there are a ton of people out there that it would work with. I've not got the benefit of that experience.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's fun to work with people who you look up to, maybe, or like who you feel like can teach you something, and be a bit like in my experience so far, if I work with people who are a bit more experienced, it tends to be more rewarding, or like, you kind of like have this teacher aspect, and then you learn a lot of stuff, and I don't know. I'm trying to think who I would pick. Who would you pick, Sam?
I guess it's two people, but Orteka.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, that would be cool.
No. I guess it would be a bit of a minefield.
Well, you never know.
I
I
mean,
mean, you can never really predict how collaborations go until you really do them. It's I mean, I've done loads, and I think every single one so far has been valuable. In several ways. So, um, the thing that is there's always one thing that you don't get when you work by yourself, and that's the kind of obligation to each other to come up with a result. So you set aside some things which you would normally spend time on, and just forget about them, and you're I mean, as much as I think just dabbling around is valuable, during a collaboration you can't, you have to set time restriction, and you can't afford to just noodle and or switch on Netflix or whatever. You know what I mean? That's something you don't do when you when you or you forget about all your admin jobs. Like building sound banks, or your archiving things or whatever. That's all the stuff you do in your own time. But if you're together with another person, you're strictly focused on getting something done, which can be a help for both. And it's a really, in my experience, it's always a really focused environment. It's like, okay, now we're together, we owe it to each other to do something which we are both going to be happy with.
Yeah.
So
you have to be really disciplined, I think, when you're collaborating with people. And I like the fact of like, each person has their turn. I feel like the collaborative efforts, when people really try to just work together, like holding the mouse, like you're holding hands kind of thing. It's nice to just let the other person go for a little bit, and then you jump in, and then you just sit at the back of the room and you say, okay, that's not right. And then you have a little go, and then it's like 50-50 kind of. But when you really try and fine tune every sound together, I don't like that way.
No. But I mean, everybody has their strengths and weaknesses, and that's something you find out about while you're collaborating. So if you notice the other person is really quick with certain things, or has a very smart way of doing things that you never thought of yourself, there's always something in the other person where you think, oh man, that's why didn't I do it like this all this time? I've been doing this in a way that is too complicated, or taking too long, or not efficient, or restricted in whatever way, and sometimes it's just like having a conversation with people. You find out where the sweet spot is, where the overlap is, what happens when you bring those two minds together. What is the thing that can come out of it? Because you shouldn't. I mean, and also it's the attitude of both. You have to kind of let go of your sort of really strict regimes that you have in your mind for when you work on your own stuff. That you have to set them aside and just let it happen, and see what happens, and then just make the best of it, basically.
Yeah, it's pretty liberating, because my experience is that whenever I work on music with anyone else, then it just turns out completely different to how I would have imagined it had I been on my own, and that's cool. Sometimes it's like you can beat yourself up about your own music, but then if you work with someone else on a track, it's like, yeah, cool, let's go for it, let's just do it, and then it ends up being more lively, or more exciting, or a bit more kind of like genuine in a way. Like, I think the holy grail of this, especially if you're making techno, is that the track should have like kind of attitude and life, and have balls in a way, or have it's a terrible expression to use, but like have some attitude, let's say.
Yeah.
And I think it's cool that happens in a spur of the moment kind of collaborative thing sometimes. But yeah, I was just thinking.
I mean, the stay-at-home sound system sessions. The live aspect has got to be a huge part of it. There's an adrenaline.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Aspect as well, and that, I mean, it's been amazing to watch some of those.
I mean, it's
totally
hit and miss.
Inspired.
Yeah. Well, thanks. I mean, it's inspiring for everybody who's involved. It's really a question of getting together, and we never really. We make sure everything works. Like when there's any syncing going on, we make sure it's technically all fine. And then usually we kind of discuss. How do we start? Like the first sort of, whatever happens when the first fader goes up, and basically it's all completely 100% improv from there. and I would say the ones that are in this season are the ones that don't involve any preparation at all. I mean, in the season 1, some people came with some prepared like loops or pre-programmed stuff or some idea what they wanted to do, and still then it was basically just go with the flow and see what happens. But now it's pretty much all improvised in real time, so nothing is programmed. It's just played and mixed and everything happens in real time. It's complete improvisation, and it's really cool because you have to you have to you have to kind of rescue yourself out of every situation, because it's happening in real time, and if it's going in some direction, you have to find a balance in following that direction or trying to sort of take a little turn there or to bend it into something which is more to your liking, and it's all happening organically.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real skill to give each other space to do that as well.
I always say the most important thing when you play with someone and you are improvising in real time, so if you do a live show or a live set, the most important thing is listening and not doing, And also the other thing is once you hear something you like, don't touch it. Just leave it for a while and just let it breathe and develop, and then the other person might do a tiny thing which will have an impact, and then you can think about your kind of counter move, or you can whatever. So it's really like you don't really take turns. That is something which is not talked about. It's like an intuitive thing, but it is, in a sense, giving each other enough space to respond to whatever's going on.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably where I would have to learn the most, how to slow down, like you say. You're not the only one to react to everything that happens.
Yeah. No, it's really true. That the less you do, the better it's going to sound.
Well, Sunday evening just gone. That was. Great.
The one with Megan, that was fun. That was actually here in the studio. So the ones that are here, the ones that are in person are a little easier to do because you have the other person in the room. You get the energy and the the action, just the vibe of being with an actual person. And the remote ones, they are a little bit more difficult, but they make you focus on what you hear even more. It's also because there is a bit of that sort of delay you have to deal with.
Is that like a couple of bars delay you were saying, Joachim?
Yeah, it's fixed. It's a fixed 2-bar delay. Yeah. So when you do something which is rhythmical, it's actually you don't really feel it as much. As long as you stay away from sudden movements and quick DJ style editing or whatever. But but if you just let things flow, after 5 minutes you're not even aware of it. You just follow along whatever is going on coming in from the other side.
Right.
But the more abstract sets are they don't really suffer from that at all, really. It's because the movements are so slow, it doesn't really make a difference.
Super cool.
Yeah, it's cool, definitely. Let me see if I see so many things going on in the comments. Here we go. Gorbachev. Have you heard of the Flare audio systems? What is this about?
It's like a sound system.
It's been a long time since I heard a sound system anywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Can't wait
sound system, what's that? Yeah, I mean, one thing I want to say about that, I've spent a year in the studio now, pretty much. That's my only listening environment. And I recently I was invited to do this thing with Colin Benders and Steve Rahmat, like on one of his Colin's massive 32-hour live streams. And that was in a venue with an actual venue sound system. And I had to get used to it so much, man. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's such a different way of reproducing sound, Anyway,
Yeah, you know,
I forgot
the
how
room,
how loud it could be. You know.
the room.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
it's about the room as well. So I don't think
Yeah,
there's
and I mean, of course, the
good
system is
answer.
designed to be at its best when the room is filled with people. So you
Yeah.
get the empty room kind of reverb added to it. Although
Yeah.
the venue where we played was they have pretty okay acoustics, so that wasn't that much of an issue. But yeah, you get the tuning. You have a different perception of how things sound, and it also make a lot of difference where you stand in the room and stuff like that. You know.
Yeah.
So,
But yeah, I
and
mean, in general, you can't really say this PA system is, ahead of another one, because in one room one will sound great, in another room another
yeah.
will sound great, or
Yeah.
the power supply of the building maybe.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
There's so many contributing factors. So.
How they're set up, right, by the technicians as well, and who looks
Yeah.
after them, who maintains them, or if they're being maintained, and like things having repairs and cables, and yeah, it's crazy. It's so complex.
Yeah. Do you actually work when you play a set somewhere in a room? Do you try to work the sound system in a way? Like, do you find out where its limits are, or do you play with the limits, like the levels between the monitoring situation and what you get back from the room and stuff like that? That's something I'm quite interested in.
Yeah, it's one of those things where maybe after the gig, I realized that that sound system was really, like you were playing with it. It was kind of like it was pumping in a really good way, and you maybe don't realize it at the time, but you're pushing the sound levels, and it's in a sweet spot, and things start to pump in a great way. But sometimes that doesn't happen. There's not really like conscious effort at the gig, maybe, or maybe you're subconsciously you're taking advantage of it. You're like, that really responds well to slamming the bass in, and in some places that's just going to not work at all.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I always try to get a hang of it. I change the I usually play my monitors really low, or I take them off sometimes, just to hear what the system is doing when I drop something, just to see how much energy is actually happening, because that can make a huge difference in what you think is going to happen and what's actually happening. I mean, we've all been in a situation where you thought, okay, now I'm dropping this thing and it's coming, and then nothing happens. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or it wasn't as impactful as you thought it would be. So that's the thing I usually try to find out in the first, 15, 20 minutes, to see just how responsive everything is and how big of what is the impact of what I'm doing on this DJ mixer. And then once I find that it's like you said, Inigo, you kind of try to find a sweet spot where you need to be for that environment, and then you can just stay there and enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, when I play, it's pretty dense, the sound, I would say. I mean, there's always 3 decks playing, and I'm working the EQ a lot, and the sound is quite a dense sound. So a lot of sound systems can struggle with that, and it's you have to learn how to kind of back off from that a little bit. But when a sound system responds well to that, it's really great. It's a great feeling. I think for everybody, for the crowd as well, and that's the main thing.
Yeah, for sure.
For me, that's where the emotion is. It's like surrounding you.
Yeah, for sure. Then people can tell if you're feeling it and you're in control, then it makes a big difference. But I was going to say, like, I always used to try out some kind of super subby kick drums in the beginning of sets, like something with a typical 808, to see if that really comes through. Because half the time, if you're traveling around, like a lot of systems, generally 909 style kick drums really always kind of pound through. But like if you're playing really deep subby stuff, sometimes the power is not there on the system, so it's always good to kind of, or if you have the chance to do it in a sound check, to try it out. Just put like the deepest kick you've got and see if you can feel it, because that's really, really useful to have these kind of dynamic moments where you don't have to rely on constantly slamming stuff. If you can like get to a point, I think we were talking about it in our previous chat, Joachim, about getting to those like super trippy deep moments. That's like the high point in a way.
Actually, we did. Yeah.
Really
that
nice.
turned out to. It's another one that turned out to be a DJ composition.
Yeah.
What do you usually are you aware of these things? Are you playing around with these things, Sam, when you're DJing in a room? Like, do you try to notice what's going on sound wise?
It's been a while, but yeah, of course,
What do
yeah.
you
It all
any
depends on,
memories?
it all depends on like the crowd as well. I feel like, I mean, it also depends if the dance floor is full and like what you can get away with, kind of. I mean, I do like to push the sound to like a certain limit. Um, and yeah, like you said about the monitoring as well, like switching the monitors off and just like listening to how it's sounding, because it's it's kind of difficult if you come in through the backstage, you go straight to the booth and you don't hear anything of like
Right.
what's happening on the dance floor, and you might have never been to that club before. Um, and I honestly, even if I have 5 minutes to go, I always like to go for a little walk around, just like do a little lap of the club, because I
Yeah.
feel like it's super important just to come up with your track selections, because some stuff's working. You might have played it at a gig before the weekend and it smashed it. Like it was a really solid kick and like everything was really working. And then you go to the next place and you think, oh, that one worked really well. And you play it there and you're like, what? Like,
Yeah.
how did that one work there? It doesn't work here. I mean,
Mm.
that's all the differences of these sound systems. So yeah, I think it's really important to have like a good arsenal of tracks to really.
Yeah. Do you expanding on that? Do you test your tracks in on a club system before you decide?
I'm
Do you
I'm always quite scared to test my own tracks actually.
right?
Before like, I don't know why. I just sometimes I'll just tease it in, and if I do want to just like know how that kick sounded, then maybe I'll just mix it in on the third deck and just drop that kick, but actually just keep the other one in there. Just do like a little check.
Sneak it in, yeah.
Yeah,
cool.
because sometimes I feel like you can miss a certain layer in the kick, and then you put it in, and then you like missing maybe like 90 hertz or something where that real thump is coming through the system. You might have your 30 bit, and then you have your sub, and then you're missing something, and then you mix in that new track that you just made in the studio last week. You drop it, and then it's like, oh shit,
Yeah.
that doesn't sound good.
Yeah. I mean, I know a lot of people who do, test their tracks in clubs, but
Yeah.
I really never really do, because exactly for the reason you just said. So in one situation it might sound amazing, and in another one it might sound shit. So
That's what's great to go for a sound check as well, because then you could just play all your new
try it out.
and like just like see how it sounded, and you don't have the risk of it like sounding like shit.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the best lessons maybe I learned from attending mastering sessions over the years, and to have the chance to do that is brilliant when you can, to really get a more of an understanding of how the sounds will work and what is missing in your productions in a way. Where do you have to concentrate? Because I think habitually you get used to working a certain way, or your monitors in your studio are behaving a certain way, to kind of learn how to accommodate that.
Yeah, I went in with Matt Colton a couple of years ago, and that was like just so inspiring, and I'm so happy that I went to just attend that mastering session, because Matt's such a great guy, and he doesn't charge extra like some studios charge extra if you want to go and sit in and stuff, and he just like he invites you in, you have a cup of tea, like you basically just watch him master 3 tracks and see what he's doing. And yeah, I love attending mastering sessions now. Before I always shied away from it, but if there's any opportunity to go and just sit in the back of the room and listen, I think that's really important.
Is there anything you learned from those sessions about your own music, Sam? About your own production?
I feel just the highs are way too dull, and I don't know what happened there, but like I mean I look at the spectrum analyzer, I'm like, stuff's happening there, but honestly I feel like, and I also noticed that like there's a lot of mud when it comes to like a certain frequency range, and I think that's the way that I'm like building my tracks. Like there's maybe a little bit too much like, it's not sub information, but there's like too much kick and like rumble at the same time. So around 100 hertz, I think, or something like this. Because when Matt was mastering it, it was like whoa, and he started push it a little bit more. And I was like, whoa, there's not even like, it's just a whole kick to kick. There's no like dynamics in between. It just became, so yeah, I really learned some bits to like start separating these frequencies from kick to sub. And then like, it also adds to some more like groove in the track as well, rather than just having one plain, yeah. So definitely learned a few tricks from him for sure.
Yeah, it's something actually that the thing you mentioned now is something I see happening all the time. I do these sort of coaching masterclass type things, and almost without exception, that's what happens when people produce stuff on smaller systems or even on headphones or whatever. Because I totally understand why it is. It's like because you want, while you're producing it, you want that sort of energy, and you want to have that adrenaline, and so you tend to push in the bass and make the decays way too long, so you get like all this zooming. But if once you get to the stage where you actually get to the final mix or mastering stage, everything just basically it gets even more sort of smeared out in that, and if you play that on a big system, it's just going to be a continuous rumble, and all the definition and punch is gone, So yeah, I mean it can be there, but you still need to retain some kind of dynamic somewhere.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, the high end is always something I struggled with as well, Sam, seeing as you mentioned it. And I feel like over the years I've just like constantly been adding more and more and more to the point where maybe it's kind of all right now. But like the hats, I always used to be like obsessed with snappy, clicky hi-hats on records that I loved, like a Daniel Bell record or something like this, where the hats are just like, or Robert Hood, or even like Josh Wink always had my favorite kind of really short, clicky hats. And and I couldn't get it right for ages. But then I went to a mastering session, and then the engineer was like, well, sounds like you've got too many hi-hats all layered on top of each other, so of course they're not going to cut through. Just use one and make it loud enough, and then but yeah, it's hard to get those things right, especially always working in small rooms, small studios. But that's why I always check my tracks out, like try them in the sound check if I can, but also after a while I just get to a point where I feel comfortable enough to just try it out. It's not every set, or it wasn't every set, but in the places where I kind of knew and felt comfortable, then I would come prepared with a bunch of new things. I really like that aspect of like, kind of testing out tracks, and
it's a never-ending journey. Learning, and I recently started trying to learn the dark arts of using a de-esser to work on the high ends, and that's made quite a big difference. But it's like chipping away, trying to find your some sort of like perfect balance, and learning how to balance the spectrum so it's much more even. Whether you do that at the mix stage or try to fix it on the pre-mastering, it's little things come together, and I think over the years, playing my own stuff in clubs for the first time has improved, but sometimes it's still a real surprise. The biggest surprise of the night will be that didn't work at all. Yet I thought I was using the same principles as in the one before it, and that one was great. So what happened?
That's the thing about sound, man. It is impossible to come up with a set of rules that would basically be successful every time. It's just sound works in a very it's just the way sound works. It's funny sometimes, that things that shouldn't be sounding right are sounding right in one track, all of a sudden, and the other way around, things that usually go well might just fail in some occasions, and so it's always a balancing act, basically.
But it's incredibly hard to be impartial to your own music as well. And that's one of the great things of attending a mastering session too, because someone is there with a completely impartial set of ears, and they're not afraid to say, well, actually we need to put 6 dB down here, and when you're trying to do that to your own track, you're like, I don't want to mess with it too much.
Absolutely.
And, that's a danger.
Do you get attached to? Is it attachment? I don't know. Do you get like afraid to do radical changes, even though you know that it really should be done. But yeah, to get it sound right.
For me, afraid. Yeah, maybe that's not the right word, but because of the way I'm working and I'm recording to a stereo master, and there's no room to maneuver.
Right.
You can't go and fix it in the mix.
Yeah,
it's you're fixing it with, if you're thinking, well, I have to fix that with some pretty severe EQ at this stage, then
Right.
that's not right. I'm too afraid to do it. Sometimes that's what you have to do.
So,
Yeah,
so
a lot of people.
Can you describe that process? Because you said you do use some hardware sometimes, but most of the stuff you do is in the box, right? So why in that, when you do that, how do you end up with just a stereo thing? Does it still go through some analog desk or something, or
No,
is it a performance thing that you want to get right in one take or something like that? Or
yeah, well, but the majority of my production, I use Native Instruments Machine. It's like the hub. So I'm not working with a DAW. I work with Bitwig sometimes, but that's a different kind of different mindset. And I like this kind of immediacy of machine. So it's just mixing down to a stereo master when I'm doing that. And it kind of, I mean, some years ago, I was just using software called Energy XT, which was this modular sequencing thing. The first version was a genius piece of software. There's a guy from Norway, I think, who made it. And I could no longer use that because it got left behind. It's not 64 bits and blah, blah, blah. And then I turned to Machine. And instead of investing a lot of time trying to learn how to squeeze what I did into Ableton or Bitwig or that kind of thing, I just wanted to be doing that performing still. And yeah, I was no longer using a 32 channel desk and mixing in the moment. So again, mixing down to stereo and then reacting to stuff like live. That's for me where the best energy came from. And I was just trying to mimic that when I switched over to working in the box. So yeah, in theory, I could be capturing stems and being able to adjust stuff, but I'm just not used to that way of working. Still to today.
Do you have to go through a lot of different runs? Like, do you set it all up until everything's kind of how it sounds or where you want it, and then hit record and do a couple of takes until you get it right, or how does it work?
Very rarely. Quite often it might happen that a track I will have recorded like 10 minutes, and then I'm working in Reaper, like I was saying earlier, and I'm cutting it down, and I over the years accumulated some tricks, editing tricks and techniques to kind of build a track out of that and get the best bits. And sometimes the best bits are the bits you didn't plan at all, and that's always been a big part of my music. Yeah, entertaining accidents, like I always said, and then catch those, and they can become like the main part of the track, where it was just like the last 15 seconds of the recording, maybe, because you just tried to do something weird at the end, or one of the machines went out of sync or something.
Yeah, definitely.
What happens? And you didn't design that. But it's not. I don't tend to kind of try to repeat a track.
Okay. Because I've done that a few times.
Could be better.
Yeah. I mean, I've had normally if I've been practicing to do a live set, I would have like maybe recorded a jam, and then sometimes I'd feel like, oh, okay, this could be something I should actually record, but I can't be bothered to go and separate all the elements, so I just record a 2-track recording and then try and work from that. And I don't think I've ever released anything like that, maybe 1 or 2 things, but I love the energy of it. It's getting me inspired to work on that a bit more. What about you, Sam? Have you ever released stuff that's just been like a 2-channel recording?
Never.
We should challenge ourselves to do it and see how it sounds. Maybe it would be.
We do need to jump into the studio together, Ed.
Yeah, man, let's do it. Yeah. Well,
Here we go.
We've been in contact and talking about techno for years now, but never actually met in person, which is bizarre.
You gave me a lot of advice on mindsets.
Just pop over and help Sam with his writer's block.
Yeah, let's do it. We can meet tonight.
Keep your camera running.
Exactly. Yeah. But one of the last times I was at ADE, I went to see that Jeff Mills thing where he was at the Rembrandt Museum, and he was in one of the rooms and he was just jamming and playing live, and it's always so fascinating to see how he works. And also on the last Exhibitionist DVD, there's a cool little kind of like studio or living room session where he's got a few things laid out on the floor and he's just jamming. And I think if you come from that school, which I guess both yourself, Joachim, and Inigo come from, then it's just second nature to make tracks like that. But I find it really fascinating because and probably me and Sam are similar. Like I've just come from software where you like, copying and pasting blocks, and then eventually now finally years later getting into this free flowing world of like external sequencers and stuff.
Absolutely.
When I had to I had a big Allen and Heath desk, and for years that was an extension of my arms. And when eventually I had to kind of stop using that because of space and other reasons, it was like someone had cut my arms off. Like I have nothing to reach out and interact with suddenly. And, you get so used to working with the levels and send effects and stuff in a live way. And suddenly I was like, I can't do that with a mouse or even a MIDI controller. It's not working.
Yeah, you have to get
I think now it's come full circle, and it's come back to being able to work with this in the box in a much more organic way as well, which I think is fantastic. That's been maybe the last 5 years, a bit more.
They've been two completely different worlds for such a long time, and like you said, only in the last couple of years it's come to a point where going in and out of the box and using hardware and working in the box is pretty much one environment, which is great.
Super cool.
But it used to be very separated, two things.
But I haven't worked with hardware. I mean, this stuff behind me it's been in storage for quite a long time, and I've been getting it out in the last year with the lockdown, and actually getting to know some of it again. I've been selling some stuff, but I've also found these things are like desert island synths. They're really unknown depths, and it's, as I was saying a while back, you get to a point where you have quite a bit of equipment and you're not really learning them that well. You're not really getting into the detail, and so I've taken a few pieces and put it back in a rack to try and actually get back in touch with them. Have
you found you approach them in a different way than you used to?
So far, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say so, yeah. My mindset now is to explore them in a different way, for sure. But it's early days. Some of this stuff's only been here a few weeks now.
Right.
And now I have the issue of, well, how am I going to interconnect these things, and how am I going to? I have so many options. If I'm going to, and I've tried using VCV rack on a laptop as a sequencer, and running that out through MIDI and controlling this stuff. And that's something I wouldn't have been able to do in the past. But it's a completely different way of working with them as well. So it's been interesting so far, but I don't know how far the journey is going to go, or if any constructive music will come out at the end of it. It's been amazing as well, finding some of this, like ancient pieces of the internet, because there's editors for some of these things that were released in like 2000 or something. Amazingly, a lot of it still runs on Windows 10. I think I'm lucky running Windows, because Mac systems are not so forgiving for older software. But it's going hunting on websites from the 1990s that still look the same as they did then. It's what a blast.
Amazing.
And some of I had an Oberheim as well. It's not here now. Realizing this, you couldn't load sounds onto it through MIDI. You have to play. It had a cassette interface, and hunting the internet to find an MP3 recording of the original cassette, which you
Yeah.
can
Wow.
then play. You can play into the module, and it works.
Wow,
It's-
crazy.
It's
Yeah,
amazing.
that's actually
like-
still how some of the old Roland gear. The only way to back it up is on via audio, like the 909, for example, or even the 106. I think you can store or transfer things on cassette or any audio, of course. But back in the
Yeah.
day, it would be cassette.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always
Wow.
always a nice ritual, play the sound into it and hear all the beepy things going, and then hopefully after like a minute and a half, you'll see all the presets come up. It's
Yeah,
funny.
we got used to how fast things are now.
Yeah,
Yeah, even loading sounds through MIDI, it's like sitting there for a few minutes while a tiny dial is going round.
yeah.
This is like, I don't know, 20 kilobytes of data or something.
Yeah.
Right.
So what is your favorite thing you've rediscovered about the previously storaged gear so far?
Well, there's 3 Waldorf synths up there. So I've got the Wave XT. There's a Rack Attack, which was quite rare. So you might know the Waldorf Attack VST, and they made a rack version of it. It's pretty interesting machine. There's a Waldorf Micro Q. It's very similar architecture inside, but this is drum orientated. I never really got to know it at the time, but that's really a fascinating one. And a Waldorf Pulse. I was on the verge of selling it, and then I put my headphones on and started playing with it. And then I discovered there was a random preset that you can call up, and the sounds that were coming out of it, I can't sell.
Oh,
this
it's got
now.
a yeah. I mean,
That's great.
that should just be a standard thing in any synth, man. A random
That's
randomized
But
button.
it's really hard to make a randomizer that's useful.
Yeah, sure.
That's the
I mean,
biggest challenge. But
Well,
with this, it works. But
Yeah,
with
yeah,
a lot of
sure.
synths, you get randomizer, and it's you're
Just
25
madness.
times nothing.
No, that's true. You're right, but I mean, the way that it should be done really is to be able, if you were able to define ranges, for each parameter, or can exclude
Yeah.
things. Otherwise, you'll end up, if, for example, if you have a patch where there's a reverb, you'll always have like a massive reverb because most variations of a reverb are massive reverbs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's so it's
there's,
like yeah.
There's some software that I use quite a lot called Cantabile. It's like a host. It's, I think, designed for like live situations really, but it has a really good randomization feature buried inside, and you can do that. You can specify parameters and ranges, or like morphing from one sound to another, and use that to like bound as boundaries to the randomization, and it comes out with very, very useful results. But you have to spend the time to think, actually, do I want the oscillator's pitches to stay fixed, but I want to change detune a little bit, and I want to. You have to kind of think of what you're trying to achieve,
Yeah.
and then let it do its work. And back to Energy XT, that was one of the great things Energy XT also let you do was randomized VSTs, but in a really controlled way. But discovering that the Pulse had a very useful random preset thing. I mean, it's still in the rack because of that.
Yeah.
It came out with some awesome sounds.
Hooray for randomization! Yeah, I mean, I remember there was some really good FM editors for the Yamaha synths back in the day on the Atari, which had they kind of nailed it, how to use randomization, because like complete randomization doesn't always get you good results. I agree.
Yeah, so I just sold several Yamaha FM synths, and I kept this FS1R. It's like the ultimate FM synth that Yamaha did, but it's a complete nightmare.
Yeah. There's a guy who's actually building a massive controller for this one. Have you seen that?
I saw it this week. So German guy, right?
Yeah.
It's like
he made one for himself.
€3,000.
Yeah, he made one for himself, and there's probably some people in the comments that will know what I'm talking about and can post a link or something. But he built one for himself, and then so many people started asking about it that he's now actually going to build them to order.
Yeah, I read it's like 2,000 or 3,000 euros the components.
Yeah, it's more expensive than a synth, but it makes it. I guess it makes it like a totally different instrument because everything is on the front and it's all accessible instantly.
Yeah,
which is
I think he has an Arduino inside, like as a controller. I mean, it's an amazing achievement.
Yeah,
it looks incredible as well.
It looks great. It looks amazing. Yeah,
it's over 1 meter wide or something.
Yeah, it's huge. It's massive.
Cool. I want to see that. For which synth is it for? The Yamaha?
For that, the Yamaha FS1R. So it's like a 1U unit, but it's like the most powerful FM synth that Yamaha did. It's like 8 operators, and you try to program it through the front panel, and you're going to get nowhere. So that's one of the old editors I dug up out of the Internet archives.
That's cool. Yeah,
without that
process.
Claudia is asking, is it the motive? I don't know. We'll I think we've there's been discussion on the Discord about this. So there, I'm sure if you look there, I'll post it there later. That's fine.
It's not a motive.
No,
I think they came later.
Right.
And then the other two here are Nord modulars. I think 30 Drop asked about it earlier on the.
Oh yeah, that's
comments. Right. They're truly are desert island synths. There's something. Yeah, you can do that stuff with Reactor or Max for Live or any number of other environments, but there's something nice about it being hardware with knobs on.
Robin's got it. I think this is the one.
Yeah, that's the guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Robin.
Yeah. He's going to be busy with a few more orders.
Yeah,
but
I'm afraid
I think the FS1R's getting pretty hard to find. I mean, the value at the moment is really high. Yeah.
What is different with that synth? Because I actually have never owned one. But what is the difference with that one and other sort of the more sort of well-known Yamaha FM synths? What's special in this one?
I mean, it can do what the older generation synths did. I mean, I had a TX816. There's 8 DX7s in a rack, and I had a TX81Z. I have a DX7 still, and all of those, and they have their own sound as well. But a lot of that is to do with the DACs and the output, and that kind of gritty sound and dodgy power supplies, all sorts of things. I mean, the FS1R can emulate that, but they don't sound the same. You play some of the classic, like the lately bass patch that the TX817 is famous for, and you do it on the FS1R, and it's not the same because it's not got that dirt. But theoretically, the oscillators are in the same algorithm, and the stuff set up the same way. This one was the first time they had an 8 operator synth,
and format filters. Yeah,
exactly. But that's also extra ways you can make a horrendous sound. FM is pretty uncontrollable beast unless you have that guy's controller. So 8 operators is not necessarily a great thing, but it's there's a lot of power in a 1U unit, and the effects are nice. You don't have effects on the older machines. I'm a big fan of reverb, so there's no hiding from that. So it's nice to have that in there. So I decided it's a keeper.
Nice,
good. And a Nord is G2 sitting there. Is there a G2?
Yeah, there's a G2 engine and a first generation rack.
Nice.
So the first generation has a warmer sound, but it had a less powerful DSP, less memory. It doesn't do some of the things the G2 does. The G2 can do reverb and delay effects. The G2 you can output MIDI. You can do MIDI stuff. So you can write your own pattern generators. So I actually used the G2 to control the G1 with the sequencing side of things. So it's quite a nice combination.
That'll keep you busy for years, man. That rack alone.
Yeah, that's why that's truly is the desert island rack.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And what's that sitting behind you? Is that some kind of modular?
Here.
Is that Dupfer? Yeah.
The camera's back to front, so I'm trying to point.
On your.
They're actually going. they're being sold off. So it's an old Doppler A100. It's a basic system. And I had it for 20 years and didn't really make a track with it. I have to admit, I had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah.
But it's like a time sponge.
Yeah.
And compared to what you can do and what you could get now in the analog world, it's unlimited in many ways. But it's also, if I was going to get into the modular thing, it would be different stuff. So I decided it's time to move it.
Nice one.
And the thing on top.
If you want to find a new owner which will be very happy with it, just throw it for sale in the Knob Traders channel on the Discord.
It's on eBay at the moment. So.
Oh right, okay.
What's that thing on top?
The thing on top is also Doppler. It's a Regal work, which it's a MIDI controller and a sequencer, and it's quite nice because it has 8 CV gate outputs on the back, so you can use it to control the analog stuff, and you can use it simultaneously as an 8-track sequencer and as a MIDI controller. So back in the day, it was like I spent way too much of my life trying to create the perfect environment with all these MIDI controllers that were mapped to all these different pieces of hardware and sequencer stuff doing different things. But
your theoretically perfect setup.
Yeah, which never made a track.
Yeah.
Maybe. It was the same when I was using Logic Audio on Windows, back when it was a Windows thing. I spent so much of my life getting the Logic environment perfected that I could, every theoretical situation was catered for.
Yeah.
If I wanted to route this thing to over here, I could do it.
Oh man, I was that guy as well, and I just to come to the conclusion after you spending like shitloads of money on wiring and patch baying and shit like that, just to that I, putting just a bunch of small pieces of gear on a table is way more productive than having all these possibilities. I mean it's cool. Yeah, but in the end, you're basically doing the same thing, but just locally without any massive wiring system behind it.
Yeah. That's partly what I'm trying to do with this rack. Is to just focus on. I've just all plugged into a 8-channel audio interface and just see what happens.
Yeah.
Not try to overcomplicate it.
Yeah, I think
So
Inigo is breaking up a little bit. Maybe
Since
family is going back to Netflix.
Yeah, exactly.
Or Fortnite or something.
That time in the neighborhood. I work like that as well. I just have on the desk here. I always have like 2 synths or 2 or 3 things, and then everything else gets put away. And then you don't really ever record too many things at the same time. Maybe just like 1 synth and some effects, and then just work like that. And yeah, it's fun to have your zone or your little focused beast, if you will, and then don't really stray too far from that. I don't know what I would do if I had walls and walls of stuff. I think it would just be a nightmare.
How is your studio set up, Sam? Do you have everything patched up, wired in one way, or are you? Is it like a fluid work in progress thing?
It's I have my Prophet Rev 2 in front of me. That's like kind of my main go-to synth. Also use it as kind of a MIDI controller as well, a very expensive MIDI controller. Then I have this like Chinese synth, this new ASM Hydra thing. It's like kind of digital. It's a bit like the Novation Peak. But that's all being run into a patch bay, and then I can just pick and choose which one I want to use at the time. I can just unplug something, plug it in like this. It's fairly straightforward, to be honest. I did want to try and get like a desk to run everything through a desk because I never really used that. And I mean, I think me and Ed were speaking before. I think the way that we started making music was like very software based at the beginning. And then as you go through time, you start to like go and buy more analog machines. And then, yeah, we start to use desks and stuff like this. And I want to try and get more into writing properly in hardware, to be honest, just for the experience.
I think the views are gonna go through the roof now because we have a cat in the.
She's always making an appearance.
So what is your usual process then? Do you sketch things out, or do you, Sam? Do you spend a lot of time in the box? Just listening to a loop and then expanding it. What is your way? Because your music is pretty sort of forceful and driven, but there's also a lot of movement in there. So where does how does the movement where does that happen in the process?
I guess my main process is just recording like a long stretches of audio, and then I do record like everything to audio, whatever I'm doing, because I know you're familiar with A&D, Andrew and Dimitri. I mean, Andrew was kind of my mentor, and ever since he kind of like showed me like some bits in Ableton when I was a kid, he was just like, always hit record. And ever since I did that, it just changed my workflow. I just have like 4 or 5 minute long recordings of like synth lines, and then I can take like a certain section of that which I like, and then I can take another layer underneath and maybe have that under polyrhythmic layer, and then make it move kind of in that way. And then obviously automation is really key, but yeah, a lot of my stuff is very much mouse clicking, this tedious way.
But the audio parts are basically you sort of improvising with a synth or whatever.
Yeah, with a synth or
hands-on. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, with a synth, or like I'll just map a few parameters to my MIDI controller and just tweak a few bits as I'm going along, or I'm just in Reactor and I'm just like messing with like different sequences and messing with the oscillator and trying to fine tune it in this sort of way. But I'll just always hit record. It no matter if it's a VST or if it's a hardware synth. And yeah, I just have so many long audio recordings, and it's also just great to go back to as well, because I just like kind of have like my little folder, and I go back and I can just select just a one hit from that, and then slice it up into Ableton, just come up with some other like rhythmic kind of loops, reversing stuff, and then it all just kind of comes together in a certain way.
Do you actually do that? Because in theory, I mean, everybody who's generated shitloads of audio over the years can do that, right? But I'm one of the people that don't go back and try to, look for sounds that I've already recorded. I
always do that, because sometimes the recording has like 4 or 5 different like sounds in there. It's not always like the same like one bleep just running, because I'm always kind of modulating it kind of like with a certain way. And it's quite, I don't know, it's like my workflow now is kind of set, and maybe that's why I have a little bit of writer's block, because I need to kind of get out of that like mindset and kind of push the boundaries a little bit more, and come up with a new way of writing music. But that's all part of the learning, and I think that's why we all love electronic music, is because it's just never ending. Every day is just something new.
Yep. Whether you like it or not.
Yeah, hooked for life.
But like getting a new piece of gear or selling an old piece, that always helps, I find, or digging something out. That's kind of the subject of tonight, isn't it? Of like rediscovering things that you haven't used for a while.
Yeah.
And then your kind of ingrained knowledge of that piece of gear hopefully still exists, and then you maybe apply some new things you've learned, and then suddenly you discover something new. Like I keep coming back to my Korg Electribe drum machine, and just I'm amazed how detailed you can get with it. It's such a basic thing in a way, and doesn't sound amazing, but if you really push it and really force it to do stuff, then I'm still kind of discovering tricks with it, and I love it because it's so kind of crap in a way, but it actually is great.
I just bought this RX-8, which I'm really intrigued to try out. I just need to find a few memory cards for it. I think that's the most expensive part of this machine. It's like 150 quid, but then the memory card's like 80 quid. But yeah, I need to dig out some memory cards from eBay or something.
RX-8?
Yeah, it's a Roland thing.
R8, you mean?
R8, sorry. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I've got the. That's going to be the next sound pack for the people who are on our Patreon. I bought this thing from circuitband.co.uk, which you can slot into the ROM slot of the R8, and it circuit bends your R8, and it's just absolutely incredible. I mean, normally circuit bending sounds are pretty harsh, you know what I mean? It's always ending up in sort of noise territory, but this one for some reason also produces, well, it does that as well, but this also produces some more, I don't know, it's glitchy but still very tonal and very round in a way, like much unlike most circuit bending type sounds. So I've done a session together with Fritz, recording a shitload of sounds just from the circuit bend R8, and that's going to be the sound pack. So a lot of fun. It's
cool.
it totally changes the whole machine. It was one of my first drum machines, and I'm still very much in love with it. Although I haven't used it for a while, but it was actually, it was one of the first ones that you could actually, have pitch per step and, decay per step and stuff like that. So quite advanced. I think it was made in 91 or something, the R8.
Not sure.
Yeah.
Really
anyway,
cool.
You'll have fun with it. It's a really cool machine. The only thing I don't like about it is the timing can be sloppy, especially if you use it with MIDI. If you trigger the notes by MIDI, if you trigger too many of them at the same time, the timing gets weird.
Yeah.
And it's not a nice sloppiness. You know what I mean? Some machines have like a sort of weird timing, which is nice, but the R8 just gets sort of weird in timing. And also if you have a lot of notes inside the internal sequence, you get that as well, but over MIDI it's even worse. So that's why some people who use it a lot had 2 or even 3, just to have like less notes going on in each machine.
Wow. I don't actually know which one that is. I need to go and Google it now and find out which. Is it quite small?
No, there's an R5 which is smaller, but the R8
is... the R5,
yeah. But the R8 is, it's like, I don't know, same size. It's a bit bigger than the Electron machines. It's a flatter design. Looks quite space AG. Anyway.
Hands on a Circlon, that is.
My neighbor Philip Efterman has one. I mean, they're amazing. I definitely see the potential there. I mean, I do now, the way I work, I do kind of sequence synth patterns and stuff externally. I never send MIDI from the computer or something like I used to. I always found that to be really, really time consuming and didn't really get the swing or the kind of glue effect I was looking for. So now I just use the Analog 4. And I just bought this Medusa from Dreadbox and Polyend that's got a sequencer in it. And I'm pretty impressed actually so far. It's quite meaty, and it's got like 6 oscillators, and like I was saying earlier, if you just detune them all, it's pretty good. Can't go wrong. And it's got random.
When in doubt, detune.
Yeah.
If that fails, random.
The Circlon does look nice with the keyboard style buttons. Definitely some nice haptics going on there.
Yeah, the updated version looks nice with the color screen and
There's too many things out there. It's scary.
Man, we're already talking for almost 2 hours. Let's stop ignoring the people in the comments, and give them a last chance to post their urgent questions to the guests tonight. So if there's anything you always really wanted to find out about any of our guests' tracks or music or secrets or whatever, or anything, this is the time, people.
Yeah, there's been a lot of people commenting on stuff, and just nice to see people here in general. Absolutely,
but we always get so engaged in the conversation that we sometimes forget about bringing in the questions. Although we've had a few, but your company is appreciated, people. So let's see. Anyone?
Definitely.
Anyone? Cat names. That's a good one. What's the name of your cat? I think Sam. Did you already said that?
She's called Tiny.
Tiny.
She was like this big when I got her. I think she's not any bigger.
New artists we should look out for. I don't know. I mean, the last weekend's jam with Megan Megan Labor was quite really enjoyable. So I would say have a look on what she's doing. She's pretty incredible.
Is she based in Rotterdam, or where is she?
Yeah, she's based in Rotterdam. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Definitely
one of the great things in the last years is finding a lot of new stuff on platforms like Bandcamp, and
absolutely.
it's kind of slightly changing the way I've accessed music for sure.
Yeah, Bandcamp gives me this sort of record shop vibe. It's like not really the same, but it's like it's a really good place to discover and to learn from other people that you follow, what they're listening to. It's a really nice. It's not actually curated, but there is sort of the curation system that I've got in place actually works. It's quite nice. One for Inigo. Do you like barbell because they are heavy? I'm not sure Inigo is still moving. Seems to be frozen.
Right on time.
Well, too bad, JS. Yeah. What is this? Operator is asking, can you jam and noodle right up until bedtime, or do you need to unwind after working on it?
Oh, definitely. Unwind is necessary.
That's a good question. That's a good question.
Otherwise, up till 3 a.m. with that bright screen in your face, and you're up to, you switch on Ableton at 11 a.m. or so, 11 p.m. or something. You're
got to read a book. I can't relax until I've read something now these days.
No.
Lockdown taught me not to watch stuff before you go to bed. Just read, and then you can fall asleep. It's much better.
Screen,
yeah. It's tricky.
Well,
we lost Inigo.
Yeah, we lost him, but let's not go away until we found him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Unless it's taking too long. Oh, here we go. Let's see if he's back now. Hey. Are you moving? Yeah. Okay. Still a bit crunchy, but I think we should be fine. I think. Yeah, I mean, for me, there's the walk from the studio back home, which is sort of clears my mind. So I don't really need to. I mean, it's good to have. For me, it works when I've my working place, the space where I work, and the space where I live, separated. So it's I don't really have to, how do you say that? Like come down from the studio session. There's always the walk, which is enough to get me fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like if you're looking at the screen for too long throughout the day, you're supposed to look out the window and focus on something really far away, right? To like help your eyes, or to not ruin your eyes over the years. And it's a similar thing when you're walking home. You can kind of like get space around you and fresh air, and then definitely works. Yeah. It's nice.
Okay, so
cool.
Oh man, Inigo's really having trouble. Oh, now it's better. Better, Inigo. Yeah, just in time for the last bit.
I opened the door. There's technical solution.
I think the Wi-Fi out. Not in.
Well, sometimes opening a door can be a fix,
Yep.
It's all about opening doors.
Exactly. Now we're getting into books now. Okay, let's maybe do one. Actually, talking about books, Sam, I saw you have if I'm correctly, and I think some people in the comments already noticed, you have the David Byrne book, How Music Works. Did you read it?
Yeah, I've got quite far into it. It's quite interesting. I mean, I do like the Talking Heads and these sorts of bands, and yeah, that's quite interesting. There's a lot of tales and stuff in there, collaborations and all these different things when they're in New York and stuff. It's an interesting read. I would say that it's not exactly how it is titled. It's not How Music Works. It's just more of a whole broad overview of his life, kind of.
Well, yes, but I've read it as well. He does get into sort of more philosophical things about music as well, which is I would say kind of what the title reflects. But there's a lot of anecdotes in there too. For sure.
Absolutely, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. But it's not just that.
I recommend the one from Ableton. This what's it called? 74 Creative Strategies for Electronic Producers. I love this book. I think it's like really well written, and it's also referencing like a lot of artists that we like, because there's some music books out there which they just reference like really random stuff, but they're referencing Autek, they're referencing Aphex Twin Boards of Canada, and it's just nice to read them words in a book when you're thinking that that's the music that you like, and it's also nice to know that you're reading about like that sort of topic rather than just something that's completely off in a way.
Okay.
It's a good one.
I've just been reading Anthony Bourdain, a novel that he wrote called Bone in the Throat, which, because I've read like all of his like autobiographical stuff, and thought I'd give it a try with the novel, and it's amazing. I love it. It's a quick read. It's like just kind of trashy mafia crime thriller kind of thing. Brilliant. But it's written by Anthony Bourdain. It's like every character in the book is him basically. It's really cool.
Cool. Plenty of books I can recommend not to read, like the FS1R manual.
Yeah, I was going to say. I knew you were going to refer to manuals. Nice one.
The Waldorf XT's MIDI implementation. That's a
Oh my god,
it's a dense read.
Okay, well, I think that kind of sums it up, about about books. Usually at the end of the round, we give everybody a few minutes to talk about what they want to, like information they want to spread, where people can find their music, any current projects, anything's coming up, anything you want to make the audience aware of. So maybe we should start with Sam. Sam, what's in your pipelines?
What's coming up? I'm mainly focused on running the record label at the moment, so I have releases from Yant, who's a producer from Manchester. That's coming out this Friday. Then I have Rene Wise, who's a producer from Brighton, making some really nice tracks on like Motorvolver and stuff, and he's doing his first EP on my label. And then I'm mainly focused on like trying to write some sort of album material. That's why I'm kind of in this writer's block, because I need to figure out like what direction I want to go with this. So I'm hoping that like that's gonna be getting there in the next couple of months. So I'm not going to release any music until like autumn or fall, like more November, maybe October, November. So we wait for music from me. But
and you just did I just saw that you did a set on her in Berlin.
Yeah, I have this like kind of like quarterly residency on Horn now, so I invite people to come with me as a guest, and I try and choose artists which I think are good and are maybe not so well known, so trying to give them a platform for them
cool.
to showcase themselves. And yeah,
great, cool.
Yep.
Ed, anything from you?
Yeah, I've just been really working a lot on label stuff as well, actually. I mean, I'm always kind of ticking away with tracks and jotting down ideas, but at the moment, since last year, I've had a couple of projects that I really want to see through to fruition. One of them is a P. Lopez album.
Oh, nice.
Which is, I mean, he just keeps sending me tracks, so I keep having to change the track order, but that's going to be killer. It's going to be a record. It's going to be like a sampler of 4 tracks on vinyl and then a full album on digital.
We should really give him another chance to be honest. Yeah. Last time he was cool. Like too glitchy for.
He was mega glitched out.
Yeah.
So that, and also a couple of other EPs on the label from some new artists, and also really excited about a soundtrack thing that I'm going to put out, which is a soundtrack to a film. The film is by a German-Greek director called Nikias Chrysos. He's done a couple of other films. That's Bunker, I think. And the soundtrack's produced by a couple of guys who work here in the building with me. So, and one of the tracks is written by Shackleton, and then they kind of did their sort of electroacoustic arrangement of what Shackleton gave them. So it's going to be a really interesting kind of collaborative, like meaty project. So that'll probably come out in the summer.
Awesome.
And yeah, just
nice one.
Keeping busy.
Cool. Inigo, anything from you?
Good question. It turned out I made quite a lot of music in the last year. I surprised myself, and I didn't necessarily have an outlet for a lot of it. So there was a mix that went up recently on through the Hate Collective. It was just purely like unreleased stuff that I had done that I thought it would be nice to share. But I have a vague idea to kind of restart my asymmetric label and to
nice.
put some stuff
Do
out.
it.
Yeah. On the one extreme, I could sit there and think, well, I could put out an EP or even an album pretty much every month and on Bandcamp. But on the other side, maybe I should make something more focused. So, I'm not sure which way to go yet. But there's definitely, I think, a good argument for asymmetric coming back to life. Maybe not quite as brutal as asymmetric one, as we were talking about earlier.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. When the label became digital, it was a lot more kind of left field stuff anyway. It was more variety. We'll see.
Well, dropping this is a big tease, man. Knowing that you're sitting on a lot of music which which you're not sharing at the moment, but we'll definitely keep an eye out. And yeah, hopefully
we'll see what these rack does as well. In the meantime.
Yeah. Oh, an idea, maybe release per month and with a subscription model. I don't know. Good.
An NFT limited edition.
Yeah, exactly.
Full circle.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So on that note, thanks so much, guys. I really enjoyed talking to you and hanging out. Thanks, Inigo. Really nice to see you after all these years.
And you. Thank you.
And Ed, great to see you again. And Sam.
Thank you.
It was absolutely amazing. Thanks for joining, and thanks for everybody in the comments on YouTube and Twitch to join us. One thing I want to drop is we are nearing the end of Stay Home Sound System Season 2, and we've already announced the lineup, but we are working on the finale, like the marathon. That's going to be a nice one. Not revealing anything yet, it's still in progress, but it should be a fun one to do. And we have a Discord server where all us nerds gather outside of these talks and continue the conversation about nerdy subjects, about gear, making music, about all that stuff. And we have a Patreon page if you want to get to subscribe to this thing, support us, or get sound packs or masterclasses. Have a look. Sander should post the links in the chat now. And that was my plug for this week. So thanks again, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Have a good evening, and hopefully see us each other in real life and at some time, some place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
For a beer.
Take care, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Ciao, ciao.
Yeah.